He's just an arrogant narcissist that's gotten away with being a piece of crap for so long that he felt untouchable. I think ultimately it's going to be his arrogance that brings him down.
Alrighty, welcome back. Mike Lomas, Glenn Wiggle taking the week off. And with me, Ron Waskow, one of our partners at the Financial Guys. And make sure you like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. This is the place where money meets politics. Very similar format to our radio show that we've been doing for over 20 years. So find us. You've already found us. So I'm so used to doing radio that find us here, dial in here, which we are going to get the technology to do. We're going to do this podcast eventually at some point live, and allow for call-ins as well. So I don't even know where to start, Ron.
There's a lot.
There is a lot. It was this morning before I left. I saw Dr. Fauci talking about 6 foot or 3 foot distancing for schools. And he was saying, well, the CDC is going to come out pretty shortly with some direction. And I'm thinking to myself, how long do we need to wait for direction? I mean, and are these people, and they really are, these bureaucrats are this stupid that they really think that the children are staying 6 feet away from each other, that they're not playing with their buddies.
It's not about
hanging
science.
out. No.
It's never been about science with them. It's about control and it's about power. To answer your question, how long do we have to wait until the Democrats have full control and then they'll relax everything when they have their communist government implemented, and then everybody will be happy.
Yeah. The My Pillow guy, by the way, I saw this week. He's talking about launching a social media site. Love to see him, Trump. I mean, people have said this to us. You guys should launch a social media site. Look, you need billions of dollars
To start.
to really make an impact, right? To be able to do that. But that being said, when you look at conservative business owners, and Trump said this a while ago, he said, when you look at who's actually paying the taxes, it's not the liberal Democrats. There's a chunk of them that are doing it, right?
At the top. Yeah.
And we've said this forever. They do it because they manipulate the left. They're very easy to manipulate. And a big chunk of the Republicans are as well. Warren Buffett, it's okay the pipeline goes away. Why? Because he owns the trains. He doesn't give a crap.
He's shipping them by rail. He's making a ton of money off of it.
Microsoft, Apple. I mean, how many tax breaks have these companies gotten throughout the years? Amazing how they want you and I to pay more taxes. But when you really start to open up the book, you realize, well, wait a minute. Why did Microsoft get all these tax breaks? Why did Amazon get all these tax breaks? Why did Apple get all these tax breaks, right? Well, they're voting for Democrats.
And Amazon's still getting them.
Yeah.
Every time you hear a new proposed location of a warehouse or distribution center, they're
Right.
talking
Not even tax breaks. They're talking about here's 30 million.
Credits.
Here's 50 million, right? Here's cash right out of our pockets. Yeah, absolutely good point. I would love to see something, because that's the war now, right? The war used to be TV, it used to be radio, now it's online, and they dominate it, and they control it, and it's that. And it's real easy to control people that don't really follow any information on, what's actually going on. These people go home, they watch American Idol, they watch whatever they watch.
Sure, catch the network news or
America's
whatever.
Got Talent, the local news. The local news just happens to forget to tell the story about the actual real COVID numbers, and we're on our way.
That's it, yeah. And that's why I think we need, and you're starting to see it, is a transition to almost a parallel economy with conservatives, because anything to do with the Democrats, to do with big tech, we're just going to have to completely get away from and start our own.
Yeah, I agree. Democrats put, and we'll talk more about this today. By the way, Ron Waskow in with me, Mike Lomas, Financial Guys. The Democrats put into the bill no new state tax cuts. This is in the COVID, the supposed COVID-19 relief bill, which we'll talk about here a little bit. Total waste, total garbage. The Democrats put into the COVID bill no new state tax cuts. Now, I'm not sure they can actually constitutionally do that, but I want you to think about their thinking for a second, right? So a part of it is, and people are going to say, well, it's because they're giving money to the states. By the way, the states that are getting the most amount of money, California and New York.
Yep, the most wasteful states there are.
What kind of bullshit is that? By the way, I want you to think about it this. If you're a teacher and you've been teaching in the state of Florida, as you should have been, 5 days a week, 100% open, you are paying federal taxes. Those federal taxes are now going to fund the teachers in states like California and New York who refuse to go to work.
Absolutely.
Pretty amazing.
not only do they refuse to go to work, but those are also the sanctuary states that are giving in-state tuition to illegal aliens and harboring them and setting up communities where, they're restricting ICE and Customs and Border Patrol from going in and cleaning up the criminal ones that we're trying to get rid of, or were at least under Trump. Apparently not anymore.
No. Now they're welcome. It's amazing, by the way. All these people are in the, quote, same cages that the Obama administration set up. But that just seems to be not a problem at all, right?
Well, it was a big scandal under Trump. AOC and all her buddies were down there crying for all these kids. Now that there's 7 times as many in these facilities, and it's okay. They're crickets.
I saw Pelosi, well, of course, Pelosi, Biden, you name them, right? Harris, they're all talking about the fact that there's a crisis at the border now because of Donald Trump. The crisis at the border is good. They left them a mess.
Yeah, it's funny. This just happened about 52 days ago. What else happened about 52 days ago?
Right.
Anything?
Unreal.
Can't make it up.
Unreal. And again, going back to the criminal mainstream media, they're just corrupt. They're incompetent. You name it. Bundle it all up together.
It's just propaganda. They're no different than the news in the Soviet Union was 35, 40 years
That's
ago.
right. That's right. Really sad that the Soviet Union actually got to the point where they were telling the media what to do. We don't even need to tell the media what to do. They're trained.
Yep, they already
trained.
know.
It's like a dog who gets trained to know that they're going to get fed at 6 o'clock in the morning, right? My dog knows that. Gets up 6 o'clock in the morning. The media knows that they need to do whatever they have to do to support the left-wing agenda, and that's just where they are.
And they do, without shame.
Democrats put into the COVID bill no new state tax cuts. I want you to think about that for a second, folks. What they're saying is, if you are, first of all, let's give all the money to the crappy states. Let's give the money to the states that are totally incompetent, like New York. Hopefully, by the way, trying to get David DiPietro. Sorry, I get my Davids confused here. DiPietro on. Talk about New York State, because New York State has already pissed away all the money that they were giving. So yesterday they were voting on a budget. All the money that was supposed to, quote, shore up the budget, that's already been spent and more.
Perfect.
Unreal, right? But think about this. So they put into the COVID bill no new state tax cuts. And this says a lot about how Democrats think. They think that government will always spend your money better than you will. Right?
Absolutely.
So if you're a state like Florida who's done all the right things, you have half the deaths of the state of New York, although your population is 20% age older. I'll get it out, right? So 20% older, and but you can't give your money back. You can't get your money back. That's really scary to me. So they're saying, that you can spend, that the government will spend your money better than you will. You're not allowed to give tax cuts. So I'm a state like Florida. I got my crap together. I've done all the right stuff. I can't cut taxes. Scary.
In a state where they don't even need to have an income tax because they're fiscally responsible.
Right. Amazing.
Then you have states like New York that people are fleeing in droves.
Yeah. Well, we got better schools, Ron.
Yeah. Well, and the weather too.
And
it's the weather that's shoving people away.
And we got better roads.
Nothing to do.
We got better roads. Really amazing when you start to look at the SAT scores, by the way, because it's the argument 20 years ago was, well, we got better schools. That's why. Not true.
Not anymore.
Not true.
They might have at some point back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Not even close anymore.
And I think the real reason is because 40 years ago, people didn't, for whatever reason, they didn't raise families in Florida. It was like, hey, we're going to torture ourselves in this bad weather, and we're going to do in our retirement years, we're going to go down and enjoy stuff, right? But then people started to say, wait a minute, I'm going to go where my money's more welcome. And as people started to move to Florida to raise children, the school districts got better because people are focused on them, right? It was sort of an afterthought before. Now the SAT scores are higher in Florida than they are here, right? The vaccine rollout, 20% ahead in the state of Florida than in the state of New York. Now, how could that be with all the taxes you and I pay? We have offices down in Florida. I drive around. The roads are perfect. Roads are perfect.
It's all that big government down there they've got.
It's unreal. It's unreal. Gone is Mr. By the way, I didn't watch this, by the way, but it was at the Grammys last night. I get the Grammys.
I think it was the Grammys the other day, yeah.
So Grammys were on last night. So this is how totally out of the loop I am. Grammys are music, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not into all that pop culture
All right,
either.
so I turned it on for 1 second, and what's amazing to me is we're getting rid of Mr. Potato Head.
And Dr. Seuss. Don't forget Dr. Seuss.
We're getting rid of Dr. Seuss, but I turned it on for a second, and these people were dressed up like, sluts.
Oh, it looked like you were at a strip club.
On national TV.
It was embarrassing.
Right? That seems to be just fine. You and I live in the same town, and I didn't know if you know this, but the school board is talking about putting on the agenda gender-neutral bathrooms. So gender-neutral. So Mr. Potato Head's
Why am I
bad.
not surprised?
Mr. Potato Head's bad. However, Dr. Seuss, bad. Dressing up like a slut on national TV, not so much, right? The possibility of allowing a boy into a women's bathroom, not so much. Allowing boys to compete with women on a sports field where they could possibly crush and hurt somebody, if not kill somebody, not so bad. Mr. Potato Head, awful. What a joke.
Are these the school board members proposing this that don't have their kids in school anymore, I assume?
I don't know that. I'm going to try to find
Yeah,
that
we might
out.
need to look
but
into
the
that.
fact that that's on the agenda, even what's amazing to me is these kids in New York State are not even going to school 5 days a week unless you're in a private school, right?
Yep.
Some of them are 2 days a week. And don't get in the, by the way, what an awful education. I mean, the 3 days are not in school. They are not learning 3 days a
Sure.
week. In fact, in our district, one of the schools, Marilla, said you can do 5 days a week virtually. Okay, well, at least they're going to school 5 days a week. Alma Primary said the teachers need Wednesdays off.
That's when the COVID comes out, Mike, is Wednesdays.
They need Wednesdays off to regroup. Like, what the hell does that mean? You need Wednesdays off to regroup. Like, you have the whole summer to regroup.
Yeah, exactly. You get 3 months.
Wednesdays off to regroup.
I wonder if they were passing that on to the grocery store workers that haven't had a day off in a year.
Yeah.
You know,
Or how
that
about
they're
the
going to
business
picking up their
owners,
groceries.
right? How
Yep.
about the business owners who have been just tortured over this mess? Just really sad. And so we'll talk more about the COVID relief bill, by the way, because that's where all this money's going, right? The COVID relief bill is not a COVID relief bill at all. It's a payback to the unions.
Absolutely it is.
It's a payback to the folks that have helped Joe Biden get elected, whether he did it right or wrong. Certainly some of these unions organize as they always do. They do a great job. So one thing the Democrats do is they never back down and they organize well,
Yep.
right? Now, they don't work. They don't work. And by the way, can we play? Is it okay if I play this video? I'm looking at Kelsey. We got to play this video, by the way. This is the commercial of the year. And hopefully for those of you watching on YouTube, we can edit this thing in. This is awesome. Let me find this. It really does summarize in a very funny way exactly what the Democrat Party is all about right now.
Are you sick and tired of your calm, peaceful life? Are you sleeping too well at night? Is your city too safe? Well, not anymore. Introducing Democrats. Politicians so incompetent, they'll fill your neighborhood with riots, looting, rampant violence, and even homelessness. The secret is a special blend of corruption and good old-fashioned stupidity. No more pesky law and order. When Democrats are in charge, nobody's safe. Simply vote for Democrats, sit back, and watch your neighborhood burn to the ground. But wait, vote for Democrats now, and they'll include rolling blackouts, election fraud, cancel culture, taxes, and more taxes. Democrats, bringing chaos right to your front door.
So speaking of taxes, by the way, the Biden administration has already talked about increasing the capital gains rate,
Yep.
increasing corporate tax rates, increasing estate tax rates, and now also increasing personal income tax rates. That should do a whole bit of good for the economy right now, huh? Unreal.
Wait till Liz Warren gets her wealth tax in there too, which should be unconstitutional.
Great point, by the way. I love Liz Warren. She's exactly what the Democrat Party's all about. She's worth about $7 or $8 million, and she proposes this at like $20 million, right?
Right under the threshold where she would qualify for
Every time.
Never
Every
fails.
single time. Under Dirtbag Obama, he increased the tax rates at anybody making more than $250. Well, he happened to be making more than $250. Joe Biden is now talking about anybody making more than $400,000. Guess what Joe makes?
$400,000.
Isn't that a
Shocking.
shocker? Now
You
we
mean
all
he's
know,
not donating his salary like Trump did?
Oh no. You know what's amazing is now that's the $400,000 without the Biden crime family trust fund.
Without the 10% to the big guy.
Yeah, that's a whole different animal. I'm sure that's a trust fund. It's very similar to the Clinton Foundation that they seem to siphon off whatever they need and whatever they want. You want to talk about crushing economic growth during COVID. First of all, we've had thousands and thousands of corporations relocate and repatriate money back to the United States of America because of those corporate tax cuts.
And with them came jobs.
What was amazing, we had a 3% unemployment rate at one time.
Yep.
I mean, the fact is that it's still there. If you want a job in America, you can go get one.
You can get it.
Unfortunately, one of the biggest problems is obviously the left-wing Democrats in certain places refuse to open up the economy to allow people to work. The second part of that, however, is the Biden family or the Biden administration just increased the boost of $400 a week in weekly unemployment benefits
more unemployment
for 6 months. 6 months.
So they're going to make it more incentive laden to stay at home and not work than it is to actually go get a job. I think that's what their goal is all along, Mike.
Every
I
time.
think they want everybody dependent upon government.
Oh,
they
for
want to
sure.
crush small business. They want to crush the middle class. They want to make it so you're either starving to death or you're sitting in front of City Hall with your hand out.
Yeah, you can't be that incompetent to look at all this COVID numbers over the last year or two and realize that if you really truly do the research. Now, if you turn on your local news, if you turn on CNN, you're going to get fed a line of bullshit.
Yep.
And if you want to eat it, then you eat it, right? And that's what people have been doing. 500,000 people died. No, they didn't. No, 500,000 people didn't die of COVID. 500,000 people died with COVID. Let's do a little bit of math, right? But that's not the case. The fact of the matter, we've been saying this for a long time. What you have to be a real form of stupid to think that it's okay for hundreds, if not thousands of people to jam into a Walmart, but you're not allowed to go to a nail salon right next door.
Or school.
They're
You're not allowed to go to school.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody the other day. It was hilarious. They were in Amherst, and they said they were at a playground, and there must have been 500 kids there, all playing
Yep,
together,
all hanging out over
all
each other.
hanging out, right? Some of the kids, because of course the Democrats trying to take fun away, they taped off one of the what do you call it? Where you spin around. I forget the name of it. When we were kids, they were all metal.
Got a little merry-go-round or something. The one you knock your teeth on.
Yes, yeah. So they taped it up. The kids ripped the tape off and went on it anyways, right? So he's laughing. He's like, okay, so let me get this straight. Hundreds of kids can get together here, but not to educate themselves. Like, oh no, they could easily go into the school. It's the teachers' unions who are holding out. And we talk about the COVID relief. You'll see why they're winning, by the way. They're winning with all this stuff.
Unfortunately,
because
they are.
Parents are not pissed off enough, which blows my mind. It really blows my mind. My wife has been writing in letters to the school board, and she's like, you know what? I think in the last 6 months, I think I'm the only one that's asked any questions. There's been 2 or 3 parents, maybe 4 or 5 at the most, that have asked questions over the last 6 months. Thinking, how in the hell could that be? How could that be with nobody?
Well, look
in
at all the
school?
crap they've been fed through the media. And the truth is propaganda works.
Yeah.
That's why they do it. I think a lot of parents are still scared and believe in, like you said, the bullshit
doubt.
that the media has been feeding them for
No
a better
doubt.
part of a year now, that they don't know any better. I think now people are starting to kind of wake up a little bit.
I
But the
hope
damage
so.
has been done. I mean,
Damage
these
has
people
been
are
done.
brainwashed.
That's exactly right. Yep, that's exactly right. Before we talk about COVID relief, let's talk about Andrew Cuomo. I read it was actually this morning. I thought I printed it out, but 50% of the voters in New York State still support him. And that really shows you how corrupt the Democrat Party is, right? Because we all know, we all saw Brett Kavanaugh and what he went through. That was really disgusting.
Absolutely.
Really disgusting.
Innocent man, they dragged through the mud. They made up all kinds of crap about him to try and thwart his nomination, but it didn't work, thank goodness.
Yeah. One lady shows up, and she shows up with the most bullshit story we've ever heard in our entire life, right? Even her friends were saying, come on, this is, you weren't there. You're telling me I was there. I wasn't there. She says, yeah, I was molested at this party. Wait a minute, you went back to the party week after week after week. I mean, that doesn't
Yeah,
make...
obviously she was so traumatized by it.
Yeah. So we all know she was a Democrat plant. I'm sure she's getting some kind of I'm sure she's working for the Clinton Foundation or somebody right now.
Somebody's
right?
paying her off, yep.
But then, and by the way, I believe in due process. I believe that there's women at a level of Andrew Cuomo that are going to come out, or whether it's Brett, they're going to come out and say things that probably didn't happen, right? Sure. There's a lot of crazy people out there on both sides of the aisle. However, we're now at 7, and the problem I have is Andrew Cuomo, by the way, didn't want to give due process to Brett Kavanaugh. Didn't want to. He
was one of the first ones that came out and said
immediately
he needs to withdraw.
You just automatically believe these women because he's a Republican nominee. You just get rid of him. And now he's talking about due process. What blows my mind is you've got these, quote, Democrats. We've got 3 million more Democrats in this state than Republicans. And any Republican gets accused of anything, you kick them out of office, you burn their house down, and you move on. But if you're a Democrat, you deserve due process.
The process
right?
needs to play out.
What
Exactly.
happened to believe? I believe all these women, right? Now, it's one thing if it's one woman, and it's another thing if it's two women. We're up to 7 women now.
There's
We're
a
up to
pattern.
7 women.
It's called a pattern of behavior.
Yeah, and he's had a pattern, by the way, of being a bully as well, right? The Democrats in the state are absolutely paranoid of him, so they're scared to death, so they don't come out. But there's a pattern of him bullying, and now there's a pattern of him abusing women. In fact, what was her name here? Bennett, I think, was the last one. You remember the last girl? They interviewed her over the weekend for 5 hours. And
I lost track of their names at about 5. Mike,
apparently his fetish is telling women how big his hands are.
Oh, the hands, yes.
Now, by the way, I was laughing because Glenn always said, if the Democrats are accusing people of anything,
it's exactly what they're guilty of.
they are doing it themselves.
Yep,
And now
no
it's
doubt.
funny because I'm thinking back of, when they were accusing Trump of having small hands,
With his
and all
hands.
this stuff. And now, well, wait a minute. Who was actually doing that? Donald Trump? No. It was Andrew Cuomo.
It was Cuomo.
The next one they were trying to groom as a left-wing liberal. Amazing. So apparently he's got a fetish with his hands, telling people, I've got big hands, and you know what that means and all that stuff. Amazing, though, that if he was a Republican, there would be no due process. It would be, you are out.
Oh, they would have ran him out of town months ago.
Ran him out of town.
Yep.
And I still love the fact that Republicans in this state are holding out hope that they think they can actually beat him next time around.
They won't. They'll still lose.
Not even close. He's got a war
Still
chest
lose.
of something
Yep.
like $16.7 million. The mental midgets in New York City don't care.
Well, the Democrats don't care. You can run. They would run a serial killer for office and he'd get elected just because there's a D behind his name.
Well, they did. It was the Clinton family.
Yeah. Well, look at the.
Wait a minute. He was actually accused of
Yeah,
rape
right.
too, Bill. Look at that.
Who was the mayor of D.C. that got busted smoking crack with a hooker and got reelected?
Ford. Oh, no, that's Toronto.
Him too. Might
yeah.
as well have been a Democrat. I can't think of his name.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. God, well, that's going to drive me nuts. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If you're a Republican, tar and feather, out the door. Of course, again, going back to the mainstream media. But it's amazing to me if you look at polls, by the way, the polls came out this week that 50% of I guess it must be Democrats, but registered voters agree that he should that he's doing a good job and he should stay and he should get his due process.
That's mind blowing.
50%.
Not to mention, look at all the people he killed in the nursing homes.
Well, that's gone now, Ron. That's gone. We're not talking
Convenient,
about that
isn't
anymore.
that how that happened?
I
How that
always say,
disappeared.
could these guys be sick enough? Could they be sick enough to plant some of this stuff, to move it away from the nursing home and the millions of people that were killed, to move it there? Then the FBI comes in and says, yeah, we didn't find anything. I mean, could they be sick enough to do this? We'll see. I don't put it past anybody. Like when
Absolutely
they
not.
said the FBI is coming in to investigate, I'm like, wait, so the corrupt FBI is now going to come in and investigate corrupt Andrew Cuomo,
Sure.
which should have been fired. He should have been fired when that Solar City deal went down in Buffalo.
Yep.
And billions of dollars went out the window. He should have, first of all, even if he wasn't corrupt with that, he was incompetent.
Absolutely.
That's totally incompetent. You're talking about $1 billion of our taxpayer money that just gets flushed down the toilet. So let's just, but then we find out that they way overpaid, and it happens to be to a contractor that funneled money back into his campaign.
Funny
Again,
how that works.
You and I,
It's
we go to
almost like-
jail.
It's almost like money laundering.
We go to jail. We go to jail, right? Not Andrew Cuomo. So his numbers are still good. Oh, Charlotte Bennett. I guess
Charlotte
his
Bennett.
name.
There you go.
Talks to investigators for 4 hours, and it's sad. By the way, Cuomo vaccine czar called county execs to assess their loyalty to the New York governor. Again, just shows you how corrupt this whole process is. Can you imagine that?
He's just an arrogant narcissist that's gotten away with being a piece of crap for so long that he felt untouchable. I think
Yeah,
ultimately
sure.
it's going to be his arrogance that brings him down.
Really amazing, though, when you're creating laws and you're out there on the front line with this Me Too movement about how much you're going to treat people with respect, and then you're having conversations with 25-year-old women as you're 50-something, asking them how they feel about having sex with older men, how he's got big hands, and then he's got folks like this who support him. The vaccine czar. I mean, if I'm the vaccine czar, what the hell am I doing calling county executives asking for their support and where
resigning.
they are with, and even if you don't resign, you say, look, I'm going to distance myself.
Yep.
Maybe I say, look, I believe he deserves due process, but I'm not making phone calls to county executives.
not on his
What the hell
behalf
does that
for
have to
that.
do with your job? You're the
yeah, right.
vaccine czar. Go get the goddamn vaccines out there, right? I mean, that's what we're supposed to be doing
That's
now.
why we can't get vaccines in the state, because the people that are in charge of it are busy making phone calls on Cuomo's behalf.
No doubt. When you look, again, another form of bureaucrat incompetence, when you look at how New York State has handled the vaccine rollout in compared to the state of Florida. As you pointed out before, no state tax in the state of Florida.
Yep.
So how in the hell are they 20% ahead of us? I'll tell you, because the governor's got a brain in his head. You know what the governor did? Very simply, he went to Publix, a private company. He said, we know you know how to do this. Can we partner with you and get these vaccines out the door? A few people accused him of saying, well, there's no Publix in some of the poor towns. He said, no problem. What is there? There's some Walgreens.
Yep.
We'll partner up with Walgreens, and we'll start to roll this out. They are 20% ahead. Instead, you've got Andrew Cuomo, who wants to be the godfather of all this, and he gets into this zone can get it, this one can't, teachers can, teachers on the left, teachers on the right. Nobody knows what the hell's going on. It was like the first week, I think 20 or 30,000 vaccines just went wasted. Right?
Oh, of course.
And so absolutely right. Now you've got the vaccine czar that instead of working on a plan to maybe partner up with some more places, the ramping up of this is accelerating pretty quickly. Pfizer came out with a report this morning that millions and millions of vaccines are now going over to the EU and all these other places. Now there's, of course, Johnson & Johnson and some of these other folks. So you're seeing this, what happens, folks, is that Johnson & Johnson just doesn't turn it on and all of a sudden there's 75 million vaccines. They ramp up production. And they ramped up production. They've also partnered up with Merck to say, hey, look, we'll let you produce some of this stuff, but it's going to ramp up the more it ramps up. But you got to have a plan. If you got the vaccine czar, so you're worried about, hey, Mr. Poloncarz, do you support Andrew Cuomo? Let me let you in on a little secret. All these Democrats will fall in line. That's it. You don't even need to
They
call
always
it.
do. They always do.
There will be a very small amount that will sort of break with the herd. But Poloncarz, trust me, he'll act like a little tough guy, and then he'll be like, "Oh, Andrew, I love you. How do we get my little morsels to get back and tell the town that we got $1 million to do this project, to do this windmill project that nobody's going to work at?" Ridiculous. They will all fall in line.
They always do.
Yep, 100%.
And that just shows you the disparity between the private and the public sector. That's
Yeah.
why Republicans and conservatives are for smaller government.
Yep.
Get the government out of the way, because there's no accountability. If you ran a private company like Cuomo's been running the state, he'd have been in jail years ago.
Oh, jailed years ago, probably bankrupt, maybe
Yep.
even before jail,
Yep.
right? But again, and that's why we always talk about smaller government. You look at these bigger, it happens in business, by the way, too. You know,
Sure.
you look at some of these businesses that just get so big. I mean, GE used to bring good things to life, right? Check out their stock over the last 20 years. It hasn't done well. You know why? Because GE got out of what made them great. They got so big that they didn't know what this department was doing in comparison to
Yep.
this department. That happens. I mean, look at even the bigger companies. You look at Apple. Apple has sort of stuck to what they do great, right?
Sure.
They didn't start to buy it. Now, I know, but some of the good companies can do this, right? And that's really the trick with managing, and a good CEO is to be able to say, okay, if we're going to get into this, how do we make sure that it relates to this? And we can all make money together more efficiently and operate better. It's a challenge, and especially in publicly traded companies, right? You need to grow. You need to get
Absolutely.
bigger. You need your stock price to get higher. That's why people buy you.
And
However,
the good CEOs, Mike, and the good managers know when a dog is a dog and when to get out of it, too.
Yes.
They'll try some, they might not work, they cut bait, and they move on to something else that's more lucrative. Government doesn't do that. Government doubles down on those losers.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk, by the way, Mike Lomas and Ron Waskow and Glenn Wiggle will be back next week. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, go to our website, thefinancialguys.com. We actually do manage money for a living. Cool thing is we get to Monday through Friday, we get to work with folks that think like us, okay? And that is huge, huge. If you don't think like us, find an advisor that does think like you, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you watch this podcast or listen to the podcast because it's a train wreck for you, it's a car wreck, you just can't help but turn it off, find an advisor that thinks like you. We're not the right ones. If you do think like us, you can interview our team. We've got certified Social Security claiming strategists, Medicare experts, chartered financial analysts, registered investment advisors, certified financial planners. Our bench is very deep, and we can help. TheFinancialGuys.com. Let's talk about COVID-19 and the $1.9 trillion waste. Now, we all know that, it's funny when government hands out a dollar, it actually ends up going like 10 cents usually goes to where it's supposed to go.
Yep.
The other 90 cents sort of goes all over the place.
To their buddies usually, Democrat donors typically.
Yeah, and Republicans too. You know, we've been talking about for years. I mean, the first 2 years of the Trump administration, the Republicans had everything. And one of the things that we were very critical of that administration of is that they didn't cut anything. I mean, how could you have shrimp being studied on a treadmill and you cut nothing, right? How could you have wasteful spending like that? And Trump did his best to stop giving money overseas.
Yeah, he tried.
And I think Trump did a good job of that. It was the Republican Party themselves, and half of these folks are addicted to this stuff like crack
just like the
cocaine
Democrats
addicts.
are. Yeah. And if you look at Congress, the whole first 2 years Trump was in office, his supposed to be his own party was subverting him. They were running up against him and blocking him from being able to implement his agenda.
Yeah, time and time again, which is sad. And of course, at the end there, you've got Mitch McConnell and some of them throwing him under the bus, which was even sadder to see.
Yep,
You know?
it's a shame.
Yeah.
And it just shows you why both parties hated Trump, why they had to get him out so badly.
Yeah, well, and they did what they had to do. Pelosi said he will not be back in office no matter what she's got to do. And she was right. They found all kinds of ballots in the back of a Yugo at 4 o'clock in the morning to push it through. Still fighting on some of that stuff, by the way. There's 400,000 ballots in Georgia that haven't been certified yet. 400,000.
Those are the ones they lost chain of command or
Yeah.
chain of custody for, so they don't even know who had them when or who
Shocker.
they belong to.
Shocker.
Funny how that works, isn't it?
Shocker. Let's talk and end this with COVID-19 and more of government pissing your money away. $1.9 trillion in waste. This adds, by the way, Ron, $14,000 per household to the national debt. So the pandemic coupled with its effects on the economy led to an unprecedented amount of federal spending. In fiscal year 2020, it was over $50,000 per household. This year, we can already expect another $45,000 per household in national debt.
But Mike, I thought they were giving us $1,400.
Yeah, yeah. Think about that.
So you mean they charged us $45,000 and gave us $1,400, and I'm supposed to be happy about
Does that not blow your mind? And many of us don't get the $1,400, right?
Yeah.
Most of us don't get a huge chunk of us. Although they did increase the limits this time. But what Ron just said, if you're a taxpayer, I want you to think about that math. We're adding over $50,000 per household in 2020 to the national debt. And yet they give us some crumbs, $1,400. They give us. Who in the world do you think is going to pay for this?
We are. Yeah, we're paying for it. Our kids are paying for it.
Our kids are going to pay for it. Our kids' are going to pay for it. I've been saying forever, even with some of our the chartered financial analysts that we work with across the country, these economists, they'll say, well, debt doesn't matter. I'm like, no, debt doesn't matter until it matters.
Until it matters.
Right.
Then when it matters, then it's too late.
Then it's a big problem,
Yep.
right? And it's not just the United States of America, so don't think it's just the U.S. China's got 3 times the amount of debt that we do. They're all leveraged. The whole country, the whole world's leveraged. By the way, an incredible opportunity for the United States of America to win. Get your fiscal house in order, right? If the rest of the world is leveraged to the gill, we don't have a problem making money in this country. We have a problem spending too much money,
Yep.
right? And like we were saying before, that doesn't matter until it matters, right? You've got a credit card bill. It's only $3,000. It's only $20,000. It's only $30,000. It's only $50,000. It's $50,000, but it's at 1%. Okay. Well, what happens when the debt goes up to 7 and now the $50,000 doubles over a 10-year period? And that's $100,000. Oh, now it matters.
Yeah,
right?
or
Now it matters.
16%, and it's doubling every 4 years.
Now it matters.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Let's see here. As the COVID bill, while combating the pandemic, ought to be the centerpiece of legislation referred to as COVID-19 relief, public health represents less than 10% of spending in the package.
9%. It's not even 10%.
Yeah. Let me say that again. Public health, not even fighting COVID. We'll talk about that. Public health represents 10% of the COVID package. That's pretty crazy, huh? It opens the doors for taxpayer-funded abortions. How do you like that?
Oh, isn't that wonderful?
How do you like that? While previous COVID legislation contained standard provisions that prevent federal funding for abortions, those provisions are missing from the new legislation. This means family planning money for Planned Parenthood, subsidies for health plans that cover abortions, and even international funding without pro-life protections. It should be unacceptable that the legislation supposedly justified this.
So what a lot of people unfortunately don't understand, but if you're wondering what the Democrats' obsession is with Planned Parenthood, it's money laundering. So they give a bunch of our taxpayer money to Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood turns around and donates every election cycle to the Democrat Party, and it's just this vicious cycle. It's just money laundering. That's all it is.
Yeah, truly sad. By the way, for those of you asking where am I getting this, this is from the Heritage Foundation. So if you want to go to Heritage Foundation to actually find some real numbers, it includes opportunistic welfare expansion. There's a shocker. Wow, there's I would have never thought the Democrats would put welfare expansion into this.
Why wouldn't they want to put people back to work? How about that jobs program, that three-letter word JOBS that Biden was always talking about?
Oh, Ron, why need jobs? Why need jobs? They need time to vote. They need time. You can't work and vote.
That's why they got to stay home and vote.
Yeah.
They're going to send you 7 ballots, fill as many out, and send them back as you like.
Well, you can't get out in the streets with COVID out there. I mean, you could get sick. The legislation includes benefit increases and expansion for a variety of safety net programs, including unemployment insurance, Affordable Care Act subsidies, and the Earned Income Tax Credit, cash welfare payments. So talking about adding cash welfare payments. I love this, by the way. Watch and see the Biden, of course, we all know is controlled by the Obama family, and it will be Affordable Care Act 2.0. So that's what they're going to spend the next 4 years on expanding that. And that's what they do, by the way. Like the Community Reinvestment Act was Jimmy Carter.
Sure.
He throws it out there, and then Bill Clinton
doubles down.
He finds his shiny little ball and says, I can create a subprime mortgage market and destroy the housing market and blame it on Republicans. Well, but they really do. They find this, they throw it out there. What they do, they throw it out there, and then the next one gets off. It's like fishing. Throws it out there, lets it sit for a little while, and then it's a lure, and Ron gets in and goes, I'm going to now play with this thing. I'm gonna make it work, right?
So there's subsidies for crappy insurance that the government forced you on because they got rid of all your healthcare options. So now they're forcing you into this crappy plan, but then they're going to turn around and give you money to pay for it.
Yes.
Makes so much sense.
A crappy plan that cost $100 million just to get the website up that didn't work. $100 million. We could have easily done that for $10,000, and that would have been a stretch. The bill includes more than $1,000 per person in funds for state and local governments, despite the fact that the federal aid last year dwarfed any localized revenue reduction. So we actually gave way more money last year than they needed. But it wasn't enough, apparently. So at least $90 billion will be given from the general public to pad out pension plans. There you go, for private sector workers. Overwhelmingly benefit big labor. So on the top of that, $57 billion will go towards the transportation sector in a way that privileges unionized workers. So $90 billion being funded. What the hell does that have to do with COVID?
Didn't they already do that like 12 years ago?
Yeah.
With the
General Motors.
They
They bailed them all out. Now, how many bailouts have you and I gotten running our own company?
None.
Anybody bail out your 401k plan when it goes down?
Nope.
Total joke. Let's get some good ones here. We did national debt. For just a fraction of the bill's $1.9 trillion price tag, we could deploy rapid self-administered COVID-19 testing around the country. That's absolutely true. Let me
speaking of which...
This was go. Sorry. No, go.
So the guy that invented that rapid test came out recently and said Fauci doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, and all he does is come on TV and lie.
Yeah, there's been a lot of doctors that are thinking that test, whether you have the regular influenza, a cold, a version of the cold, it's going to create a positive result, right? And I do believe that because we've had folks that are clients that have tested positive that they're like, my kids had the sniffles. Well, if your little children had the sniffles, that's really, kids aren't getting COVID. They don't know they have COVID. As they get a little older, they have a chance, but these small kids, they're not getting COVID.
Coronaviruses have been around for
forever.
Hundreds and thousands of years.
Yeah.
The common cold is a coronavirus.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, any other year in history, folks would have had a little runny nose. They might have lost their smell for a week or two, and they would have gone to work, right? But now, well, we had to use this to get Trump out of office. To their credit, they did it, man. They did it, right? They did it. You think, there's barbed wire around the White House right now because they know for a fact they didn't have more people that voted for him, right? They know that.
Absolutely.
That's what happens. In a free election, the majority of the people vote for who they want in the White House. Once that's done, we go back on to living. Maybe we not like it, but now they know that they robbed that election. The bill would provide $126 billion for K through 12 schools around the country. $126 billion. Now I'm asking you, Ron, throughout this whole crisis, have you paid your school taxes?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So
we cut a nice big check not that long ago, actually.
And I mean, you're in the investment business. How's the real estate market doing? Pretty well, huh?
Yeah, it's doing great.
Geez, in fact, real estate prices have gone up, and so has school taxes. And And what I don't understand is what they're doing, what the hell they're doing with that money. Why do they need $126 billion? Now, of course, many of you liberals out there, you're drunk on stupidity. You say, well, they need it to open the schools. I'm not sure what you need money to open the schools. In fact, I called our local school district and said, I called the administrator, the superintendent. I said, I'll open the thing for you. Just give me the keys. I'll open it. I'll talk to the janitors.
Sure.
We'll get the boilers running. Within 15, 20 minutes, I'll have a cup of coffee. I'll have the whole school running. You can invite them all back, right? That really shows the incompetence. But when you really start to break it down, you realize exactly why these teachers are not going back to school, because they hold out for more money. So Congressional Budget Office says that only $6.2 billion of the $126 billion, just 5% would actually be spent by October. More of this funding will be spent in 2026 than in 2021. Now, we have to be pretty close to herd immunity with coronavirus, right?
Sure.
I say that because 1/3 of the country over 1/3 has at least had one shot. And by the way, for you liberals who say, well, it's only one shot, it gives you a huge boost of immunity. The likelihood of you getting it after one shot is very low. Likelihood of you getting it now without a shot is pretty low. 1/3 to half of the country's had COVID. I look around all the families that I know that I hang out with, mostly all of them have had COVID.
Yep.
All of them fit into the 99.997%, which means they didn't die and they're living and they're just fine, right? So we're pretty close to herd immunity. Let's hold that thought for a second. I got Mr. Dave DiPietro calling in here. I appreciate you, sir, calling in. You were on the front lines yesterday of some money being spent, our money, our taxpayer money. Now, fill us in on exactly what's going on in New York State, because my understanding is, we were just talking about this, New York State, California got the most amount of money out of all the states. So I would think that all this money that's going to come in from the Biden administration, that's our federal tax money, is going to get New York State back on its fiscal track, and we're going to have a nice budget and everything's going to be great, right? A nice surplus, I should say.
Yeah. You know, if you're in Disney, I'd say that's probably a good way to put it, but we're not. And what happened yesterday was the one House Democrat budget, and here's how corrupt this whole process is. I've got two points. Is the leader from Buffalo came out and said at the end of this whole process, which is just their wish list, and said, "Boy, this was such a great debate today. You know, that we were able to, you know, we included everyone in this, everyone's represented." And I'm sitting there screaming at my Zoom going, "What are you talking about? You never once called the Republican conference to see what our constituents want. This was the wish list for your Democrat people." Totally dominated, 94% by New York City. Okay, so what happens, the down and dirty is the governor comes out with his budget, gets the money from Washington, and the Democrats put together their own little budget, and they say, this is what we want. Mm-hmm. And to the tune of $8.2 billion more than the state budget that was presented.
Wow, more than the state budget.
$8.2 million.
The budget's not bloated enough.
More than our state budget, and also more than all the money we got from the federal and everything else. And they could not answer. It was like crickets when we debated them yesterday on it and asked them, how are you going to fix the yearly ongoing deficit now, because the structure of the budget is so warped from what you Democrats did to it in the last couple of years, that next year we're in a $6.1 billion hole, and the year after that $7 billion.
I'm guessing, Dave, that they're not going to do business math, which you and I and Ron would sit down as a team and we'd say, okay, 400 or 500,000 New Yorkers have changed their residence, right? Some of them maybe have not sold their place in Manhattan, but they certainly now are living 6 months in a day down in Florida, right? So we have to mathematically try to figure that out, because there is going to be a lot less money coming in the next year. I'm sure they're not doing that, right? They're probably going back and looking backwards and saying, well, everything's going to be hunky-dory in 6 months and we're going to be back to business as normal, right?
No, they have no clue. As a matter of fact, what a number of them said, because remember, the demographics of the whole state elected officials have changed, especially in New York City, where they started bashing capitalism. They said the reason we've got any of these deficits is because of the horrible capitalist system that we live under, and we've got to change that and get everything more fair.
So what are
make
they
it more
advocating for,
fair.
Dave? Communism?
Oh yeah, some of them are.
exactly.
He'll tell you that some of them are full-blown communists. They got the card in the pocket. Yep.
Yeah, there's over a dozen full-blown communists now in the assembly.
Isn't that wonderful?
And the sad part is a lot of the Democrats, even the ones in Western New York, never say a word against them. They don't want to upset their conference, so they just go along with all this stuff.
Yeah, amazing that even the quote moderate Democrats, and there's a few of them, they just have zero stones, right? You look at all these different towns and municipalities across the state, and now Andrew Cuomo, I mean, now he's got a seventh lady that comes up. If that was you or I or anybody else that's a Republican, the first one that came up, there would have been no due process. They would have burned our house down and sent us out on our way, right? Now he's got 7. Now there's stories coming out about him and his hands. You know, it's funny, Dave, we were talking before. Everything the Democrats blame people of, they are actually doing themselves. So remember when they came out with Trump and his hands and all that stuff, and that was all BS. Well, now it's actually Andrew Cuomo's hands that they're focused on because he's telling women that he's got big hands, and apparently that means you've got big body parts. So let me ask you this. Does he go anywhere? Do you really think he goes anywhere? I think not.
I don't think so either.
There was a vote out this morning that New Yorkers actually think he's like he wins in any basically any general election right now. 50% popularity, which is nuts.
Well, no, he's not going anywhere. I mean, I thought there might be a chance this week, but he's going to use that poll and say, "Look,
of course
I didn't do anything wrong." But here's the sad part: is if I'm a woman, there should be millions of women around the mansion, the governor's mansion right now. And the fact that here's what he's done: he's totally destroyed the sexual harassment movement theory. Because I'll tell you what, any elected official gets some woman comes out and says, "Oh, he sexually harassed me." The first thing they do is say, "Well, when you get 7 more, let's talk."
Sure, right. Dave,
it's 7 more, and then we'll talk about it.
Dave, it's almost like they don't care about women.
No, they don't care about them. They care about winning elections and spending
power.
their money and power.
As simple as that. Yeah, they want the power, and that's the ends justify the means, and they will cheat, lie, and steal to get it, and they have.
So the bigger picture is they've already spent $8.2 billion of our federal money that they didn't have, asking for what $6.1 billion more. Or no, the $6.1 billion is what we're going to be the hole in at least next year in New York State.
Just to start.
Yeah, at what I have to ask as a money manager. You look at these New York State tax-free bonds and stuff. I mean, at what point, as an investor, now we don't own any of that stuff, but I think to myself, at some point, there's going to be a default. You can't continue to do it. And at least once a week, if not twice a week, and there's 16, 17 of us advisors here around.
Yep.
I hear at least a story a week of one of our clients who's going to be relocating down to Tennessee. Here's the places. The 2 big ones are Texas and Florida, right? And they're not leaving because of weather. Some of them are. Majority of them have just been fed up with the political garbage, right? And
Can't blame them.
I think to myself, man, if they're looking at budgets with a $6.1 billion shortfall now, and we know these Democrats are not bright enough to look into, to run the real numbers that we would as businessmen, what does that balloon to? I mean,
a lot.
$1 trillion at some point. I mean, where does it stop?
Probably.
Right? Really scary. Now, Dave, are you going on with Russ and Carl this week?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
Yeah,
sweet. So I appreciate you calling in. I know you are crazy busy. I promised you I'd only take a few minutes of your time. I wanted you to update us on yesterday, but make sure you tune into our show. Glenn and I playing hooky this week. Dave will be on with Russ Thompson and Carl Palladino, and that's always a can't miss show. I'm such a nerd and a loser. Like I get the weekend off and I'll tune in and I'll be texting these guys like awesome point, and they're like, well, can't you just go take?
Might as well just stay and did the show.
Why do you do the show with us? All right, Dave. Well, look, man, I appreciate you filling in for us on Saturday, and we will be tuned in. And I totally appreciate you giving us some time here today.
You got it.
All right, buddy. Have a great day. Stay sane.
Bye.
All right. Dave DiPietro, by the way, appreciate that. Let's just see. By the way, it's a little late, and we mixed in there, but he was on a call in Albany. Real quickly, and we'll wrap it up. Bill, we were talking about the COVID waste before. The bill would provide $126 billion for K through 12 schools around the country. And that's $6.2 billion of that. Just 5% will actually be spent by October, actually opening up the schools. So the folks who just don't get involved and go, well, they must need $126 billion to open the schools. Yeah, apparently they don't need that. They're just going to use it in 2026.
So how did all the schools open pre-COVID with all that less money that they were getting.
I know. It's a joke. The bill would spend another $350 billion to state and local governments on top of the hundreds of billions of dollars already provided. The spending is completely unwarranted, as last year's coronavirus relief measures have already given states windfall funding well in excess of the projected revenue shortfalls. You just heard David DiPietro on. He's frontline in Albany saying they've already pissed all that money away, so that's great.
And then some.
Yeah. The bill allocates, and we'll wrap it up here, the bill allocates $39.6 billion to higher education, so professors.
Sure.
And it's funny because I've got nieces and nephews that are in college now, and they're still paying their bills. So why do we need $39.6 billion?
Well, they're going to get rid of tuition, though, right?
Yeah, that's right. In fact,
for illegals.
I would think we would need less money. If kids are still paying their tuition and professors are doing it from Zoom, I would think the cost of that campus is a lot less. Just saying.
Probably paying room and board that they're not even able to utilize.
Here's the sick part, right? Here's the sick part, folks. You're talking about $1.9 trillion. And we'll wrap it with this, because this is why we know they don't give a shit about business owners. $26 billion to restaurants. So think about that. They gave $39.6 billion to higher education and professors, and only $26 billion to restaurants that they have absolutely crushed. Professors are still getting paid. Colleges are still getting their money. Restaurants are crushed. $15 billion to help fund the airlines. So that just shows you where their priorities are. If you're a restaurant owner, if you work for restaurants, if you're somehow related to that, if you like to go out to a restaurant, and friends and family that you know own restaurants, $1.9 trillion. Maybe you take a little of this money and you help with the vaccine distribution. I understand that. And you take some money and you specifically give it to restaurants or people that have been crushed because the government has said you can't go to work, right? They don't do that at all. Less than 1% of the COVID relief bill will actually go to vaccine development. Isn't that crazy?
That's disgusting.
Less than 1%.
Disgusting.
Mr. Waskow, I appreciate you spending some time with us.
Me.
That is a very fast hour. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. Hit the bell and subscribe to us on YouTube. We got to get that conservative talk out there. And our website, thefinancialguys.com. We do manage money for a living, so I want you to use this as a resource. If you'd like a complimentary consultation, we have offices down in South Florida, Rochester, Batavia, and right here in Williamsville, New York. Also, independent Medicare experts. If you're turning 65, you must think of the Financial Guys. And Social Security claiming strategists, certified financial planners, registered investment advisors. The list goes on and on. Use this as a resource. Hey, we'll see you not Saturday. I'm playing hooky. I'm spending some time with the family. Russ Thompson, Carl Palladino, David Bellavia. That's David DiPietro. I love you, Bellavia, so that's why I always get you guys an incredible group of folks, by the way. So make sure you tune in to WBEN Wham if you're out in Rochester, and of course you can listen to us on radio.com and iHeartRadio. God bless. We'll see you next week.